Hey guys, so I'm gonna start like this new little video series where I talk about programming when I've got nothing else to do. And today I'm gonna start this off with a little thing that I've been thinking about recently with a bunch of the stuff I've been doing over the past couple months for like personal projects and such, and just making my workflow a little bit more efficient, and just branching out as to what I would be writing in. Whereas, like, generally speaking, I like to write in C most of the time, but you know, sometimes it's good to branch out and adapt and learn more languages and write in different languages in different use case scenarios. So I wrote up a little topic list here. So the general synopsis is like why we shouldn't really get hung up as to like what language we're writing in for most things. And like, if this is more so focused on like personal stuff, if I'm writing something for myself that like there's no end user that I'm delivering it to, then I shouldn't really care as to what language I'm writing it in, if the program is doing what I need it to do in an efficient manner, and it's not taking me 10 billion years to write the program. So the first thing I want to talk about is like programmer efficiency and introducing bottlenecks into your workflow that you're like arbitrarily just throwing them in there. Say, like, again, I'll use the former like, so say I want to just write in C all the time, and all I'm doing is writing in C. There are going to be some things that, you know, C is not the greatest for. Say I want to do a bunch of text processing. C is a language that is absolutely terrible for strings and the like. So that would be a giant hassle for me. The programmer efficiency, while it would probably be, the end product would be a very efficient program because C is a very fast language, it would be a hassle for me to write a text processing program where I'm like taking in a bunch of strings and storing a bunch of data and dynamically allocating everything. It would be a pain for me to write that in C. Whereas I could write it in something like Python, and I could write that in like less than 20% of the code I would have to write in C. So while the Python code would, you know, it's a slower language, it would be less efficient in the sense of runtime. If it's only me who's looking at it, then does it really matter? And if it's getting what it needs to be done well, then it shouldn't really matter all too much in the end. So let me go over one program that I use a bunch. I use for my like terminal-based file manager, I use a program called Ranger. This is a Python program, but it runs fine. It's got a bunch of Vim key bindings, which I really like. I use Vim for pretty much everything. And it runs completely in Python, and it's perfectly fine for what I'm doing. But let's look at like actual programs I've written. So let's take a look at, so I've got a calculator that I use a good bit. This is a little bit shifting calculator that I wrote. This is written in C. This is something I would write in C since this is a calculator, like it does a lot of low-level operations like arithmetic shifts. So say I want to bit shift 1 by 3. I have it so it can do that and output the binary representation of everything as well as the decimal representation. That's something I'd write in C because it's lightweight. The code runs really quickly. I can just bring it up. Like, this is just called with a shell script, and I've got an I3 key binding, so I can just bring it up whenever I need to do any calculations. I can, like, say I want to do like 105 or something like that. I can easily do that. And when I'm done, it's just, there we go. It's quick, it's easy. That's something I'd write in C. Something I'd worked on recently was this up here. I've got my Spotify player script that I wrote. I wrote that in Python. Let me cd into my development environment. So in this case, I use Python here because it's a lot of string manipulation. There's some libraries I use like dbus, and if I were to write this in like a lower level language like C, it would take a lot longer for me to work with all these streams and do all the text processing that I do. And it's dynamic, so every time it runs, it's doing a lot of manipulation. I wouldn't want to write that in C. And even though I'm not the biggest fan of Python in the world, I always rag on the fact that it's slow and that I'm not the biggest fan of the syntax, but this took me not that long to work around and get it working nice. And that's something that Python's really good at. It's really good at making things in a short amount of time. It's very efficient for the programmer. It may not be efficient during runtime. It's really good to write things quickly and efficiently and just get them done. So let's go on another little tangent here. So, like, say recently I just launched a website and I wrote that in JavaScript and HTML, and when I wrote it, I had never done any web development in my life before. I'd never touched this stuff. I was like, I'm just gonna learn it and do whatever. It really doesn't matter that you have never worked in these languages before, because even though I'd never touched JavaScript, I've never touched HTML, all languages are really this is kind of like a blanket statement, but they're all kind of the same. If you've written in a couple different types of languages, you can adapt to them all. And this is one of the other point I had in the little topic list I had there. While we specialize in, I want to specialize in lower level languages like C, C++, if you've written in enough, if you've been writing code long enough, or just writing in general in different languages long enough, you've pretty much seen all of them. They all have their own paradigms, they all do their own things. HTML is a typesetting language. That's, it's hosted on the internet, but it's a typesetting language. So if you've done Graph, if you've done LaTeX, which I've worked with in the past, it came really quickly to me. Or JavaScript, it's very similar to Python or Java. It's all very, very, it's all kind of the same. So it took me 2 hours to get the basic syntax of what the languages worked like, and I was able to write a website for myself in, I don't know, it took me maybe like 5 hours of working through it to get like the basic stuff down, and then I spent the rest of the time working on posting it and stuff. But like, that's more of like what I'm talking about, is being able to adapt to what you need to be doing, because while you're not working in your preferred language, maybe your preferred language isn't